Property management order. First order being the approval of minutes. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Got a motion, second?
Second.
A second. Any discussion on the minutes? Not entertain a motion to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next on the agenda is FEMA grant buyout.
Chairman McAdoo, members of the Property Management Committee, and Mike Hughes, Rutherford County Engineering. Brought with me today Matthew Fasig. He's my Public Works Engineer, also works for the Highway Department, and we are going to be discussing FEMA grant buyouts that we were made aware of by EMA, Tim Hooker, and Matthew, I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, so EMA reached out to us and let us know that TEMA, Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, had some grant opportunities available. We met with them on October 8th. They have 3 programs available, and we're looking to take advantage of 2 of those programs. The first program that we're looking to use is the Hazard Grant Mitigation Program. They have a funding match of 75% federal, 12.5% state, 12.5% county. So we'd be competing against just the counties here in Tennessee. We have 7 different properties that we're looking to pursue for buyout. These properties back up to sinkholes, or all 7 of them involve sinkholes in some shape or fashion. And you can kind of flip to the back there as an example of some of the 5 of the 7 properties off of that one particular grant are right there. This is in the Walter Hill area.
These are older subdivisions that developed without the benefit of, I guess, modern GIS and our current regulations.
What are these street names? Do you remember?
This particular street is Roanoke. I have sent letters to these people, but I've not heard back from everybody, so I'm going to just go through each one of their addresses.
Okay, sure.
They've not all of them have had a chance to talk to me about them. But at this point, we need, TEMA has directed that we need to submit a pre-application due October 31st, so it's kind of a short turnaround for us. So we've got the properties that we're pursuing together, and we're looking to basically get a resolution and
Yes, a commitment to pursue the grant. And the first step is essentially a letter of interest saying we'd like to apply for the grant, and then the next step would be a more detailed grant application.
it's due December, I think December 1st.
Yes.
Was this the same area that had quite a bit of flooding some years past?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We had a situation, I'm sure you're familiar with it too, but we had a situation, quite a bit of flooding out there.
Right. And this is not the first time that we've done this. We've done this before I started with the county at the Twin Oaks subdivision off Twin Oaks Drive, and then
In the Appomattox area. kind of north
Appomattox
of
and
the-
Greenwood Estates. I think we bought some lots out off Jefferson Pike up there. So
With stipulation here where it says the homeowners are not required to sell the property.
We are not forcing we're not taking
It's
property.
totally
This is
voluntary.
a grant opportunity. If the homeowner would like to pursue it, in other words, if the homeowner is interested in allowing the county to purchase it, we would like to move forward with it. If the homeowner wants to keep their property, we are not forcing them to sell. That's what I mean by that.
It won't be 100% participation. It could just be cherry picking whoever
Yes.
does
Yes, sir.
it.
Right.
You don't have to have all of it.
No, sir.
So, but from the pre-application, the properties that I have for them on my pre-application, if they're not on there, I don't get to submit them later. So I had to kind of come up with a list in kind of a short window here and get them submitted on this pre-application.
What's the difference between mitigation and
So,
program and assist? What's the difference?
yeah, great question. The hazard grant mitigation is a program that is just among the Tennessee counties. The flood mitigation assistant is going to be a nationwide competitive grant. In other words, the local or the recent hurricanes that hit South Carolina and the Gulf, we'd be competing against those same folks. So, but the other 3 properties here that are listed with that grant were recommended to us by TEMA because they have repetitive losses. In other words, they have insurance and they have had repetitive claims through their insurance company with water damage to their structures on their property. So we, at their recommendation, grabbed those 3 for this particular grant. So we kind of followed their recommendations on that.
Have these houses flooded?
Yes, ma'am.
They
Yes.
have flooded?
Yes, ma'am.
I know those that we bought before, we bought 5. I believe I'm right on that.
We-
Might be
we-
more than that.
More than that.
I think it's
What's
like
it
7 in Greenwood
It
and
was
on
it?
Twin Oaks.
Twin Oaks was 1 to 5.
Yeah. But I remember working with 5 of them. So, but
I think we
what
kept,
about if they have the opportunity to sell their house and they don't, and it floods again? Are
That's
they-
between them and their insurance company.
Okay.
Or if they don't have insurance company, or if they don't have insurance, then
I don't think they should be allowed to come back to us to get it resources. You
it
understand
would
what?
be, I guess if they have another grant opportunity, I don't see why our staff couldn't support them in trying to reach out for another grant opportunity at a later date if they don't want to sell now. But I do agree not going, all out and trying to rush right out and hey, we gave you an opportunity here. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying I wouldn't shut the door on.
This
on
is
saying-
taxpayers' money. We need to watch how we spend this. They have the opportunity to correct something. It won't. That's enough.
Okay, I understand where you're going with that, I do.
Yeah.
But I'd hate to say never to someone if there's another opportunity that comes along.
Which 3 houses is it?
I did not list all the properties for you as I've not heard back from all of them yet.
Well, are these the homes for the flood mitigation?
So 5 of those properties there are the hazard grant mitigation program. I didn't list all of them for you today.
Okay, so the hazard grant is the same as flooding, it's just a different grant?
Correct. They're all flood related by FEMA. In other words, these are all houses that have water problems.
And so we're choosing 3 through this state grant. And then how many was it for the federal, state, local grant?
For the state alone is 7 properties.
Correct.
For the
Federal,
nationwide
3.
is 3.
There's one that's a full fund, and the rest of them are partial.
I didn't bring that one. That's kind of a unique situation. We have one property that was identified by TEMA as a severe repetitive loss. In other words, they filed a whole bunch of claims. I have elected not to pursue that one at the 100% federal. It's a 52-acre property. And
And 2
as
houses on it.
far as I can tell, the primary structure doesn't flood. It looks like a barn that they may be using as residential keeps flooding. I'm sending them a separate letter to reach out to them. We contacted TEMA and asked them, is it possible to carve off just the property that's flooding with the sinkholes around it? And they said, not as you're going through the grant application. It has to come to them as it had to come to them as a separate property, not something that gets carved off in the grant. So I will reach out to them and if they have another grant opportunity next year. And if that homeowner is willing to, just depends on what he wants to do. I didn't feel comfortable moving forward with 52 acres and looked like their house was okay, just a structure on their property.
Okay, if this scenario comes to fruition, be a total of 10 units, right?
Correct.
Okay, and be a grand total of $380,400 for the county.
370, 450 is what we're looking at.
Well, let's see, 287 and 82.
Unless I did my punched at the calculator wrong, but I did try to add those up.
Okay, anyway, anyway, the 41,000 per unit for the first grant, and 27,000 for each one of them.
So the county would have a smaller portion for the hazard grant mitigation.
Correct,
The
'cause it's
state would
90%,
cover.
because it's 90%.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah,
And
what a nationwide.
what I'm showing there is the county's portion. So
Okay.
I didn't include the federal and the state portions, just what the county would be responsible for.
So that-
We're able to purchase all 10 of them.
Right.
So it'd be roughly, say, $375,000.
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
So that includes testing for lead and asbestos in the houses, and then also demolition and the county's
And
portion.
obviously the purchase of the property,
Right.
which then designates that property on buildable. Once it's in our inventory, you can't go back and put a structure back on that property. That's the same as the properties we already have in inventory.
They're
We
just-
have to go out
just
and do
open space.
an annual inspection just to make sure that those structures are on there, and then we submit that to FEMA. So, or TEMA.
What about mortgages? I know that they need to pay the mortgage off if they owe money on it.
So whatever the property is appraised for is what they would get for the property. So if they're upside down on that, I guess they would make the decision if they're willing to do it or not do it. So they're not obligated to do the grant until they, just like when you buy a house, you gotta go through and sign all those signatures. That's their obligation. At any point up to that moment, they can back out of it. Once they go through the paperwork and sell the property to us, then it's obligated, the funds are obligated to remove the structures on the property and basically make sure that no one builds there again.
So do you have the money in the budget?
We are asking that that you guys make a resolution to commit funds if we were to receive these grants.
If you receive the grant, could you back out at that point?
The homeowners can back out at any point up to closing with
What
the
about
sign.
the county?
The county,
I'd say once we make the
I'm not
commitment.
sure on
Once you
that. I
make-
really hadn't thought about, just in my opinion, I hadn't thought about if we were actually awarded the money, about why we wouldn't actually follow through with the,
Well, if we were granted the grant and something happened, the county have to take this money and move it somewhere else, or something happened that we hadn't anticipated happening, could we back out of the?
I honestly don't know the answer to that
I
question.
think there is some stipulation that allows that. Phyllis Foltz,
Who's our
her legal secretary, was here for the last time, and he said there are certain instances, so if there's a tornado or something like that, we could use the funds for that instead of purchasing the houses. So there are.
So tonight, we could maybe have the authority to pursue the grant, but we don't have the authority to extend
Allocate
that
the money.
287, or that 370.
And
That-
At this point, I don't think you would need to. Just as a FYI, they have not allocated funds for the 2016 cycle of the grants. FEMA hasn't. They said that they announced who gets the money, but they've not cut checks yet from the 2016 cycle of grants. Just as a FYI, it's a lengthy process to go through their review.
And the county would be responsible for like mowing and upkeeping the property
It would depend on the
if they sell.
parcel. So if the parcel is in a subdivision, then yes, there would be a maintenance to it. If, on a couple of these tracks, I think they're a little more remote, and you do not need to, maybe just mowing just the front few feet or something like that, or hitting it with a brush hog once or twice a year or something like that.
What's the advantage to us to do this? What is our cost in these flood situations that mitigating this will be a benefit to the taxpayer as opposed to not participating?
I think the biggest benefit would be for FEMA for having to pay out their flood insurance claims.
Right.
But it's also a benefit to our residents too, or
For life safety issues, not having to send people into harm's way to go rescue someone in a flooded.
some of these places, you got, when that water's out, you gotta have like a boat or a canoe or something to get out to them. I mean, it's,
Well, this is really a proactive approach to the situation that we faced before. Mr. Mayor, 370, 450, if this all falls in place and everything, what kind of strain, at least to say this would be on our budget?
Yeah, if they're just now paying out for 16, cutting out that grant cycle, what's our deadline on this?
so the pre-application is the 31st of October. The actual submittal of the application is December 1st.
And
2018, so you're probably looking.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah.
And have you already written letters of
I have
contact?
written letters and sent them. Yes, I have.
And when did those go out?
This week.
Okay, so not a lot of time to get a response back as to, and that, and are you prepared to share with them that it might be 2022 before they can get the money?
Yes, I in no way want to hide or mislead or
Yeah.
do anything to make them feel like they're somehow going to get later shafted by the county. I'm trying to be upfront, honest with them and let them know that this is a grant opportunity presented by FEMA. This is the process. This is how long it takes. Once we get the initial responses back, we're going to try to hold a meeting in November to give them an opportunity to come to our office with a TEMA official to kind of go over some of
And
these
has
things.
any of the 7 come forward and said, will you buy us out?
Previously, they have asked for some sort of buyout. I know a few of the ones from the 7 have. One property in particular was on Channel 4 News last year, and we had very lengthy conversations with him.
Okay.
And I think that his insurance canceled on it too.
You've done this before, Chairman, and Carol, y'all participated in these buyouts in your
We've
role?
done it before, like you brought up two projects we had. I remember Twin Oaks specifically being the latest one that I can remember that we did. But it was a little more involved than just the grant application. I think we bought out the properties at Twin Oak and we took some of the houses and let the fire department have classes or something out there.
Control burn?
Yeah, and we used it for other things for the county that
Do they still
really
allow control
benefited
burns?
us.
And we still own those
I believe
lots?
they do.
Correct, we do.
Yeah, we do.
But if we
I
had
have
to
to-
demo it, what?
It
do we
says
have
here
any
we
idea?
demo it.
They
Yeah.
Public
demo?
Works demos.
The structures would be
Yeah.
demoed and removed. I think with
But
Commissioner.
we have any estimated cost on the
Well,
demolition?
we lucked out at Twin Oaks because the county fire department went out there and had training, so they basically took care of our demolition on those properties.
I could support the pre-application, but I think we need to hear before we support the December 1st application. I would need to know are we committing ourselves to $370,000 on that day? I would be less comfortable. That's a budget conversation. This is a pre-application, so I make a motion to approve the pre-application with the right to reevaluate prior to the December application. That's the motion. But I need from you, though, can we back out as chairman?
That's like I asked,
Yeah.
but my main concern is, I'm looking at these figures and I know I got to send this to budget. And then from budget, it goes to the full commission. Then if you get to the full commission, they say, heck, no, we don't want this, then where's that gonna leave the county? What liable will I have if the county just back out on funding it?
I think what they would back out on is the pre-application. At that point, the county commission in November voted this down, went to budget, got through budget, then it went to the November commission meetings, they voted it down. The only thing that's gonna be submitted at that point is the pre-application.
Correct.
The motion is the pre-app,
Pre-app is in the motion.
just the pre-app.
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
and you would do the pre-app if it passed here, because the commission meeting is after the 31st, so you have to do the pre.
Nothing commits us from this meeting or your motions to force us to submit application on December 1st. This is.
That's what you're asking for, is to give you permission to
Permission
go
to
forward.
apply.
go-
Yes.
To submit the application.
Permission to apply for the pre-app, correct?
Give a second. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Does this go to budget?
Well, we need to send it on the budget as soon as we can because I want the full commission to commit to this as quickly as possible, with the deadline he gave us.
Can you also share when you get homeowner approval or rejection, so maybe the commission knows when we're voting that all 7 are interested, or how did you give them a time, how did you ask for them to give you feedback within reason?
Right, so I asked them to reach out and contact me, and if they don't contact me, then they will not move forward on the application.
Okay,
And I think I gave a November, somewhere in
Okay.
that neighborhood deadline.
Yeah,
I think
send it.
full commission is
It's
15th.
the Thursday, it's the 15th, the Thursday after
And I
that,
think
yeah.
what we were trying to do was set up a meeting for any interested parties on
I
the
remember
12th or 13th of that
I
week.
didn't remember seeing
As well as a holiday.
Yeah.
I think the 13th, we were trying to set, if you want to come to our office
Okay.
in the evening,
We
we'll be available with a team official
Yeah.
to talk with them, and hopefully we'll have a much clearer picture of some interested parties at that point.
I was kind
December, I'm sorry, what was the December deadline?
For the full application for the grant.
And what date was that?
December 1st, I think was it.
I was just kind of piggybacking off Commissioner Dodd. The pre-application's fine, but if they come back and they all say we're not interested, I
There's
don't
nothing.
know
Or
if
if our
I would
budget-
move it forward. Your budget says, or I think Commissioner McAdoo Cook said that commission says ridiculous.
They come to us several times before they ever got bought out before.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, several
Yeah.
times. They come up here and talk to
It's
us.
about a 6-month project.
We
got to this point. But,
This could possibly be less than 10. It's just going to how much participation.
It's at the max, 10
This is
properties.
max.
Yeah.
And we
okay.
apologize that this grant was we were only made aware of this grant like 2.5 weeks ago.
Oh,
So
Yeah,
it was,
we had the meeting with them on October 8th, and where they detailed what property you could apply for and kind of explained to us what they would expect to see for this process, so.
Okay, you want me to have the motion read?
Yes, please.
Approve the pre-application with the right to reevaluate before the December application deadline and forward to the Budget Committee.
Okay. Everyone understand? Okay, any more discussion? Not call the roll.
Commissioner Cook?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good presentation, Matthew.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda, presentation by Enterprise Fleet Management. And
That's why you gave up your chair, Commissioner.
No, that's fine.
That's right. You gave me your chair. I appreciate
Quite all
it.
right.
before we get started, I'm gonna let the mayor give us an introduction to what we're looking at tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. We have with us tonight Mary Elizabeth Rowe. She's with Enterprise Management, Fleet Management, I believe, and your guest is?
Steve Dulick. I'm also with Enterprise Fleet.
Okay, Steve, thank you for both coming tonight. Before I took this office, Mr. Davidson had shared with me, both he and the previous mayor, that they just never got around to talking to Enterprise. Enterprise had been trying to get in front of the committee, this committee, for some time, and never made this opportunity. So when Deputy Mayor and to the mayor, Sandra and I set up a meeting with Mary Elizabeth, sat down and talked with her. It made sense to me at least to bring it to the Property Management Committee. They are, of course, Enterprise Car Rental. This is a separate division of Fleet Management. And as many of you know that have been here for some time, we have some old cars in our fleet. I'm not sure how some of them are even running, but we keep them running. And there was some thought process of the property down on Singer Drive of building a fleet garage to maintain our fleet, whereas this is another opportunity I want to put in front of the commission to see is there savings, because that was going to cost us $5 million to develop that facility down there to take care of all the maintenance of our vehicles, whereas we can set this up on a lease to where they rotate in new cars. We don't take care of any of the maintenance and et cetera. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Elizabeth to explain, and our guest, what Fleet Enterprises does
Yeah, absolutely.
and can do for our county, and what they're doing for other counties and municipalities across the country.
Yeah,
Recognized.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Like you said, I'm Mary Elizabeth, and this is Steve. We're both out of our Franklin office. And so we are here tonight just to tell you a little bit about Enterprise Fleet Management, possibly answer any questions you may have. Try to keep it short and sweet so you guys can get out of your meeting at a decent time. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Like the mayor said, we partner with over 900 government entities across the country. And the big picture is to allow you to do more with less. So as we go through here, I just have a couple examples for you, what it would look like for the county, how we could possibly drive down your overall fleet expense, and at the same time, help you get into newer, safer, and more reliable vehicles. So I know you are responsible for doing what's best for the taxpayer's dollar, and this is a program that many other government entities have put into place that has helped them do just that. So this is just a few of the customers that we work with in the Tennessee, Georgia, Kentucky market. Just again, tried to pull some that were from around here. In Tennessee specifically, we work with the Memphis Housing Authority, Hamilton County, so a neighboring county for you, Blount County out a little bit further in East Tennessee, and then most recently Sullivan County also in East Tennessee. So the partnerships that we're developing with these cities and counties continue to grow. And again, we just appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to help you hopefully see if we can partner with Rutherford County as well. Steve, did you want to say anything?
No, that was perfect.
I try not to let him talk too much. So if you want to hear him speak, you might have to ask a question.
All right.
But what I wanted to ask you first is, if you take a look at this first slide, this is what we typically see, and I'm thinking that we'll probably get some agreement to this. Typically what we see for any city or county government when it comes to their fleet, it's typically fiscally stressed. It's very decentralized as far as there's a lot of different department heads trying to do what's best for their department, but there's no centralized decision-making process about vehicles. There's limitations on your revenue sources, and typically it's the capital budget is underfunded for these types of vehicles. The average age of government vehicles is typically about 8.5 years. Just to give you an example of Rutherford County's fleet, Steve gave us about 20% of your fleet to work with, just to give you some analysis in the next few slides. It's about 113 vehicles. The average age of your fleet is closer to the 12 to 15 years old.
I think we had a 1991 and several 98s.
There were a couple when I was looking at it that I had to look up to see what that make model was. I didn't know if it was a
They don't make them
minivan.
anymore.
No, they don't.
Classics.
It was a Safari, I think, was a vehicle, and a Sonoma, and I had no idea. So, but just to give you an example, so your fleet's, it's just getting older. As the mayor mentioned, your fleet's getting older. There's a lot of your vehicles that are operating without standard safety features these days. And we just want to help you do better. We want to help you get it to where you guys are operating a safe fleet for no more money than you're spending today, possibly provide an alternative to a $5 million maintenance facility. And so that's kind of what you see on some of this. Again, we just see that you have quite a few challenges. And this isn't Rutherford County specific. This is every city and county government that we encounter. So I don't want you to think that anything is different here for you guys than it is in other cities and counties. Steve, anything?
No, you guys are in a unique position, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but because your mileage is so low on average, the way vehicles lose value doesn't hit you like it does the general public or the retail market from a vehicle standpoint. So you guys, and on top of that, the way that you guys are entitled to buy vehicles, because you are county, allows you to buy vehicles extremely well, and you don't lose the value on them as fast. So what this is going to show is that there's a particular point in time where it makes sense to replace a vehicle while it still has significant value before your maintenance costs rise, your fuel costs rise, and so on and so forth. So Mary Elizabeth will get into a little bit more of that, but that's essentially the gist of the idea behind it, is pick the right time to replace the vehicle where it's going to cost you the least amount to operate that vehicle.
Steve, how many cars was in our fleet?
Well, this is just general fund cars. This is no police cars, none of that. So this is all, I think it was 113 or so. And so that's your property assessor, building code, stuff like that. There's the pause. And, well, they'll get into all what they can do, but
Is this 6,000 miles a kind of generic average? Was that some Rutherford County's data?
That is a generic average, but your average is right about 5,600 miles, just to let you know. Yeah.
Is this doesn't include the sheriff's department vehicle?
This
take them out
specific,
10.
right, we've taken them out, and it's, we didn't take them out, we just didn't have access to them in time to do this, but just so you know, we have access and the ability to help with all of your vehicles except for school buses, ambulances, and fire trucks. Other than that, we have the ability to pretty much do any of your other types of vehicles, dump trucks, if there's some highway vehicles that need utility beds or service bodies, anything like that on the back end, we're capable and have the ability to do those. The general fund, I think, was probably just the easiest list for Steve to pull at this point. So that's what you'll see in this analysis, yeah.
Like piles, they transport animals,
Mhm.
like dogs.
Mhm.
Is that something that you?
That's it, that's fine, as long as the body on the back, you just let us, we know what is needed, and then we need to update that for you. Yeah.
And this might be in
Solid
your
waste.
presentation, Mary Elizabeth, but this could be a phase-in.
Correct.
It's not an all or nothing.
That is correct, yep. To answer your question though, basically anything that you can't carry in the vehicle is what we consider hazardous material. So if it has to have a hazardous material logo on it, we would most likely have a restriction on being able to
It's
do
not
that.
solid waste,
Yeah.
just curious.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry about
Yeah.
that. So that kind of answers the question of what types of vehicles we can do. From a funding standpoint, this next slide is just talking, I wanted to specify a little bit about when we use the word lease. A lot of people think of lease as a dealership lease that comes with mileage restrictions, wear and tear penalties. That is not the case with this funding mechanism. It's an open-ended lease. It's basically where there are no mileage penalties, there are no early term penalties, no wear and tear penalties, and the county is the benefactor of the equity on the back end of a vehicle. Like Steve mentioned, you know, when you're able to start to shorten that cycle and take advantage of more of the value on the back end of that vehicle, that money comes back to Rutherford County, not to Enterprise Fleet. It's coming back to you as the end user. So an open-ended equity lease for us is really important that you understand because it's flexible. It's basically just an alternative way to fund a vehicle versus now you are most likely paying cash for the majority of your vehicles. And this is an opportunity to say, hey, is there a better use of the county's cash than to sink it into some of the worst appreciating assets that can sit on your books? So we do that for our municipality customers through an open-ended equity lease. You want to add to that?
No, I try to compare it to just the finance. Everyone's familiar with financing a vehicle, right? You buy the vehicle, you pay for it over time, and at the end of the term, you pay it all off and you own the vehicle. In this scenario here, if it makes sense to replace the vehicle sooner, it doesn't make sense to pay for the entire amount of the vehicle. So all we're doing in this scenario is saying, hey, let's write this vehicle down to a principal balance remaining that's going to be less than what the vehicle's worth at turn. Take that vehicle and wholesale it for you guys, and then the proceeds will belong to the county.
Sorry, go ahead.
Tell us the major pros and the major cons for doing this.
Yeah.
And also, Steve, what all vehicles would be involved? The property assessor's office and those 113, what all?
Commissioner, I was just thinking as a rollout, and the mayor talked about it, but we're not really for sure what the full commission wants to do. I'm thinking in my head it may only be 20 cars or 25 cars to test the program to see if it works, if we want to do this. Other cities doing it, and the money that's coming back into the county and the money that they're saving from it, we might could take off those high mileage vehicles, those 250,000 miles maybe or above, and take those out of the fleet, sell those, get those off the books or whatever, and replace those with these vehicles, whatever they may be, whatever. I'm sure it'll be a conglomerate of different offices that they'll be using, not one department, so to speak. Because they may only have one or two cars that are that high mileage that needs to go and that are getting high maintenance or whatever. And so we're talking about maybe taking those off if you want to do this and trying that program out for whatever amount of time and see how it works. And then if it does, then as our other vehicles get more mileage and older, then we rotate it to maybe a few more cars the next time. And it's a gradual thing. So that's why I only gave her the general fund cars right now, and not police or highway department or anything like that yet. So.
Yeah, we understand it's a process, and it's going to definitely be more of a phase in, and you know, we want the ability to prove ourselves as being a good partner. And, so we understand that it might be a phase-in process with these general fund vehicles, and then work our way into some other departments, highway, sheriff's department. We just wanted you to know we have the ability to do all of those if necessary, though.
Well, there's nothing constant but change, and even the highway patrol, which I'm familiar with quite
Somewhat.
somewhat, but they don't even own their vehicles, general services. And you know how many highway patrol vehicles are out on the road. So there's got to be some savings somewhere along the way, or the highway patrol wouldn't be fooling with you. So I can say, like I said, there's nothing constant but change, and if you don't change, you're going to get run over with something.
Right.
So,
And I had a couple slides up there, and I kind of want to just speak to your point as far as some of the benefits. So I've skipped them, and I think this is probably going to hit home the point just a little bit more. We put together what we call a total cost of ownership, because when we look at making recommendations for customers, we don't only want to look at acquisition, we also need to look at fuel, maintenance, resale. We put all of that into an analysis for a total cost of ownership for the county. So what this is going to show you, and let me actually go to this one first. This is an example, and it's going to be small, and I'm sorry. This is an example of a 2018 Silverado half-ton work truck double cab. It's a pretty familiar vehicle to your fleet in these general fund vehicles. What the county is doing currently is you guys are paying cash for this vehicle in year one. So this is showing you a 12-year period of operating this one vehicle. Now, to be fair, our system won't go out after 12 years. But in all reality, this vehicle for you guys on your current plan would probably be operated closer to 15 years. So this is even giving you a little bit of a break, because I can only take our system out 12 years at this point. In the long run, what this is showing though, you've only made your payment for the vehicle in year one, and then you have maintenance payments, that's line 2, all the way through the life of that vehicle. You can see your fuel payments, and then you're not necessarily making any money on the sale of that vehicle at the end of a 12-year vehicle with, the mileage pattern. So what this is showing is, from a present value term of payments, you guys are really spending, we'll say $52,400 on this one vehicle over a 12-year period. Again, you still buy it really well, but you're not taking advantage of lowering your operating costs, and you're really losing all of your resale value. So what Enterprise can bring to the table from a fleet management standpoint is helping you identify the right term to move some of these vehicles in and out. And that's what this is showing you. This is that same Silverado. Pickup trucks right now are typically doing very well on a 2 to 3 year plan. And so I wanted to show you the 2-year plan. And right off the bat, what this is showing you is that you could have operated 6 different vehicles over a 12-year period for less money out the door, that $44,731, than what you're paying for one vehicle today. And you might be asking, how does that work? How is that possible? We have
How is that possible?
Yeah. The biggest way it's possible is because, and I wanted to show you this too, because this takes into account absolutely everything. Again, it takes into account depreciation, management fee, interest, maintenance, fuel, sale of vehicle, because Steve and I, we definitely want to make sure we're transparent and show you where everything that you would pay to Enterprise is factored into this analysis on this one vehicle. So to answer your question, you're getting to take advantage of 6 resales of a 2-year-old vehicle with about 12,000 miles on it. So you can see in year 2, where it says sale of vehicle, we're going to turn around and sell that vehicle for $21,100. And that cycle continues to repeat itself. You barely have any maintenance cost, right? For a 2-year-old vehicle, you're paying about $300 a year, and that's probably just a few oil changes to get that stuff done. So what this is showing is that you could have a fleet that's 6 times newer over a 12-year period for less money than you're paying today. Steve, anything you want to add to that?
No, it just goes back to what I was saying when I first started. You guys are entitled to buy vehicles extremely well. The secondary market doesn't know that you bought the vehicles that well. So when we go to sell them, we're selling them for what the vehicles are worth, not taking into consideration that you guys got such a great deal on the front end. And Enterprise sells about 1 million vehicles a year. We do really well when it comes to that. So all we're doing is taking advantage of these types of vehicles holding their resale value really well on top of your great buy on the front end. So your actual depreciation expense over the 1 or 2 year periods is very minimal. Most people don't recognize that because you're used to paying cash for the vehicle, and now you need to get your use out of it. So you run it for 15 years. Well, in this scenario here, we're just taking the same model that we do on the enterprise rent-a-car side, is buy vehicles extremely well, sell them extremely well, and minimize your operational cost, your fuel, your maintenance, your downtime, things like that.
And every vehicle won't have the same holding period. That's another piece of the analysis that we put into play, is that from looking at the fleet that Steve passed along to us, you know, you might have some vehicles that a sedan would probably be better holding on to for 4 or 5 years. Whereas these pickup trucks and SUVs, it might be better to hold on to them for 2 or 3 years. Again, based on all the factors that Steve just said. So the other thing, just so you know, what we do as a company from an analysis piece is making sure that you're in the right types of vehicles. Even if you move from, you know, a full-size sedan down to a mid-size sedan, that's savings back to the county. And mid-size sedans now are about as big as full-size sedans were when you bought them 10 years ago. So you could downgrade a class size and save money, but the car's still going to fit the operation. Same thing for pickup trucks. If you have folks that are in 3/4 ton crew cab pickup trucks, and that's not necessary for their job application, could they get by with a 3/4 ton extended cab or a 1/2 ton extended cab? Those are all of the types of things that we take into consideration when looking at your fleet, when making recommendations and bringing those back to you for approval.
In the Silverado example, it was like, so you're switching it out every 2 years. So it's kind of like they're driving a new vehicle
Every,
you know, for 12 years instead of.
they're driving a new
Kinda
vehicle every 2 years
2 years.
versus one every 12
Right.
to 15, yeah. Because again, those vehicles that you hold on to for 12 to 15 years, they are definitely lacking some of the safety features.
Right.
Their maintenance costs continue to go up. So you're really you're not taking advantage of the new features that are coming out, and you're also losing on the features that you have on those vehicles. Fuel economy is going down on your older vehicles, and you're also not taking advantage of the new standards that are mandated by the government now for manufacturers to have higher fuel economy. So there's multiple ways where it's kind of counting against you because you're operating this older fleet.
You're recommending the Silverado, and that's a higher end Chevy vehicle.
Right.
Because of the resale of that.
Sure.
Partly, yeah.
Because I know Chevrolet truck can make a cheaper style truck, the Silverado's top of the line, but that's a bigger sale.
Yeah,
Right.
so on the GM product, the GMC Sierra would be the higher trim level vehicle. The Silverado would be the lower version of that. But there are some instances in here where you guys might be running a compact pickup, and we're recommending you actually go to a 1/2 ton, which is bigger. And it's all that the incentives are better, the resale is better, the operating costs are going to be the exact same, and it would make more sense to run that vehicle versus a compact pickup truck.
What about our property assessor? They probably put more miles on that than anybody just going around.
Yeah, and as far as the property assessor goes, you know, whether are you asking specifically from a vehicle standpoint?
Well, I was
or-
gonna go from a vehicle standpoint, if we were to use something, you know, we do have a car manufacturer here.
Yep.
You know, to make the people who work there feel like that we're using their products. If
So-
we went to the Ultimate or even the Leaf, which is battery powered.
Right.
Yeah, they use the battery power.
Right, and we spoke a little bit about that when I met with
Right.
you guys a couple, last week, and we partner with all manufacturers. In the long run, we want to put together which vehicle operates best in class for that specific vehicle. So when putting this analysis together, you know, when we look at full-size sedans and compact sedans, Nissan is the lowest total cost of ownership when it comes to those types of vehicles. And again, when you look at a 3/4 ton truck, it's going to be Ford versus Chevy, and all that has to do with the manufacturers are, you know, they put out incentives for us to, for you, and some just do more than the others on different style vehicles. And so that's why you see on this sheet that Ford's gonna, you know, quote win on some of these, but Chevy's also gonna have a lower total cost of ownership. Also Dodge is gonna come into play. You guys are operating a lot of Explorers right now. And, you know, we would make the recommendation to probably move that to the Durango because it's got a better total cost of ownership. So those are just the things, and it's on a very small section of your fleet that we have the ability to take a look at and just help you make the right decision on those vehicles. So,
Also,
oh, sorry.
would y'all tailor the plan to the department and the turnover specifically for each department?
Yes, sir.
It wouldn't be generic for
No.
any?
So it's not a blanket program, so we would work with each department to make sure that the lease setup matched what they needed. So that's why we put on here, you might have some departments that need a 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 year term. So we work with those departments to make sure that they are getting the right term for their operation. So yeah, it's not a blanket program.
Like the sheriff's department,
Theirs would be a lot
Sheriff,
different.
He would be wanting the police package. Some years, I think Chevy has the police package specials. Then another 2 years, it may be
Could be
Ford's
Ford.
got them.
Yeah.
But I think there's some vehicles in there too, as far as transport,
Yeah.
that would accommodate them and just transport the prisoners to, juvenile.
Yeah, there are several passenger vans, I think, just in this group. But to answer your question on a broader scheme, when we look at the sheriff's fleet, we look at it as a completely separate fleet because of how they operate their vehicles. Their mileage patterns don't compare to what these vehicles are doing. So we almost operate it like a separate fleet and make recommendations based on them specifically versus the generic and the general fund fleet.
Well, I think we've got some departments with some light-duty trucks that can actually deal with a car, and some that have a car that need a light-duty truck. So, but I think we put folks in those vehicles because of the best deal at the time throughout the years and trying to save, of course, taxpayer dollars, and that's what we're trying to do here. So it could be
Looking up here,
getting them back in line.
there'd be quite a bit of hue and cry from the Altima, Nissan, seeing some, even though it is a leased vehicle, so, that's high-end Nissan.
The Altima?
Yeah.
And it's pretty much in comparison to the Impala or the Taurus that you had in your fleet now. It's going to compete a little bit better than those two vehicles would. So.
What's the insurance impact? 'Cause we're getting newer cars, our insurance is gonna be higher, so we're gonna lose money there on our insurance coverage in theory, right? If our average is now 8 or 9 years, I would imagine it's a little bit cheaper to insure than a new Silverado every 2 years. Do we know what that impact would be on the county bottom line?
We haven't talked to Melissa, but, of course, 2019 is going to cost a little bit more.
Yeah.
Insurance than for the liability is going to be the same.
Mhm.
Okay, but if just for the common collision on it, if we choose to carry that, then it's going to be more than that 1991
Yeah.
Crown Vic that we have. It was a
On the
used police
safety
car.
package, can drive those insurance premiums down compared to.
Yeah, that's why I just was curious,
Sure.
if we're saving money
I
with
don't know
this.
that. I don't know that.
We have not. Most of the time, it's 50-50. We run into several cities or counties that possibly are self-insured and they continue to do that on their own. If they choose to partner with us from a risk management standpoint, we have the ability to do that on a certain section of the vehicle,
Yeah.
not necessarily the sheriff's fleet.
Yeah.
But we haven't necessarily done a full-blown insurance analysis.
Now if we're leasing, are we in charge of maintenance or is that something?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
so basically, and I can explain that pretty quickly. So, on the maintenance side of that, and this would kind of, to the mayor's point, does it make sense to build that facility or does it make sense to go this route? Hopefully, as we start putting in newer vehicles, they are gonna have less maintenance to be done on them, correct?
Like just
Right,
changes and
right.
good tires.
Right, so for example, when we put together, and kind of, it's gonna be in this is what I'm about to tell you. So, when we put in maintenance, we got with Steve and said, hey, can we use industry averages based on your age fleet, your mileage pattern fleet, and we agreed that, hey, that makes sense to do for now, right? Right now, we anticipate, based on the age and mileage of your fleet, you're probably spending about $125 a month per vehicle out on average. So, but that's because you're operating them for 10 to 12 to 15 years. We have the ability, as you start to decrease that cycle of your fleet, to get your maintenance costs down to about $28 a month per vehicle. And that is only because now it's getting into the shop fewer times. Most of their items are under warranty. Back to your question about the facility, this still allows the work to be done in the county. and it still allows some of that money to be driven into the county, into your local service centers. We don't have an enterprise service center. It's basically your local shops that are around the county that these vehicles would still, that they go to now, they would still be able to go back to these facilities, push some of those tax dollars into those facilities. And maybe you do a maintenance facility, maybe it's for your larger equipment, and maybe it doesn't have to be as large of a facility as far as space is concerned. So a lot of times we see hybrid programs of you keep your larger equipment in-house, but you know, source out your oil changes, your light duty stuff, push it back into the community and continue to drive your maintenance costs down. So to answer your question about maintenance, you still have to take it to get it done, if that's kind of your question. But when we factor that into this analysis, we factor in maintenance as part of the cost that you would pay enterprise. So there's no cost, there's no payment that you're submitting to a mom and pop or to a Firestone or to a Jiffy Lube. It's all included in this program.
So the lease, we take it to the oil change, but the lease covers that cost.
Correct.
Okay. And then we're obviously responsible for the insurance and fuel.
Correct.
And like you have, like for the mayor's car, do y'all like Yukos?
Yeah, we can put him in something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can put him in something like that.
I'm just, you know,
And that's why I'm
throwing out an idea.
That's why he's sitting
Well, that's
there.
why I'm still driving my truck. Because I don't want to drive that 91. They said, you want a car, Mayor? And I said, no, I'll just drive my truck.
The lease pays for the maintenance.
So yeah, so you have, it is optional. So you could choose to continue doing maintenance just like you're doing today. Or you could couple the fixed maintenance program that we offer into the lease and just combine it.
Would that be done up front, or can you choose to do the maintenance later?
Most often it's done up front. You can choose that if it's not something you're taking advantage of, you can choose to take it off. But most likely it would be done up front, and then if you made the decision to take it off, you can do that.
And that cost was factored into that analysis that we had put together, the 2-year replacement cycle. The maintenance was already factored into that.
Yeah. We just have a couple more slides, and then if you have any other questions, that's fine. But the analysis that we showed just a second ago was for one vehicle. These next 2 slides, all we're doing is taking that same concept and putting it into the entire 113 vehicles that he gave us. So if you take a look at this first slide, this is basically what we call just a fleet profile. And again, I know you probably can't see it because I can't see it unless I'm looking at my computer. But the biggest thing that is obvious to me, if you look at that bottom graph, the county in this specific section of your fleet hasn't purchased any vehicles in 2016, 2017, 2018, and has only purchased probably 10 from 2011 and forward in that time period. So what that tells us is that something is going to have to be done soon, and that there's not really any proactive measure being taken right now to start flipping that. And that's what we're here to try to help you do.
Well, and then I'll be coming back to you saying, I've got to buy these new vehicles when we go on state contract, but then, you know, we're going to be paying full
Correct.
total amount for, let's say, 15 or 20 vehicles starting off with. This is an alternative for you all to consider.
Right.
What's an underutilized number?
Underutilized means that vehicle was driven less than 2,000 miles annually. So we just anticipate if you're not, I'm sorry?
So you dispense with it?
It depends. If it's a vehicle that's like a specialized vehicle, that we can't really tell that from the fleet we looked at. But if it's specialized and it's necessary, then you absolutely keep it. But if it's not, and if it's just sitting somewhere and not being utilized, yeah, we recommend punting it and getting rid of it and selling it and putting whatever you sell it for back into vehicles that you are getting. But again, if it's a vehicle that's needed, we absolutely keep it. But yeah, it's a vehicle that was driven less than 2,000 miles on an annual basis.
Or that 91.
It could be the 91. It
And
could
you
be
can-
one of the safaris that I saw on this too.
And you could supplement that vehicle with an alternative, right? Renting a vehicle when needed, or pool vehicles maybe to make up, you know, I think there's, what, 8 of them up there?
There's 8 of them.
So maybe you kept 2 or 3 vehicles as pool
We
vehicles.
can all share the
those
mayor's
vehicles.
Hugo.
Yep. Yeah, they're piling at the same time like a pound car, yeah.
Are the lease payments made monthly or yearly? Or?
They're made monthly. They're made monthly, and the bill is available. It's online. It's also mailed. We have the ability to separate out into cost codes or into department codes if that helps from a billing standpoint. And typically, what we try and do is come out and sit down with whoever's getting that bill, make sure it it's as user-friendly as possible, because we have some ways that if we need to go into department codes or go into something else, we can kind of help move that around. So we have the ability to do that. So the biggest thing, and I think Steve and I are finished after this, is when we take this information, we literally plug it into what we call a 10-year model. And again, I know that's a lot of numbers and letters. The gist of this is, and I'm happy to answer any questions, what we've done is we've taken your 113 car fleet, we recommended that it comes down to 105 car fleet to get rid of those underutilized vehicles. And we basically put it on a 10-year program to where you're going to be replacing those vehicles basically 2 to 3 to 4 times over this 10-year period, depending on if it was the pickup truck that needed to be, turned over at 2 or 3 years, or if it's a sedan at 4 or 5 years. Big term picture on this is that from a 10-year savings standpoint on this fleet specifically, we think we can save the county about $480,000 on this 113 car fleet. So everything from the initial analysis on the one car, if that made sense, all we did was plug it into analysis that took into account that entire section of vehicles.
And that's just the vehicles, not our purchase or our build out of the garage facility.
That's correct.
That this is all that savings includes you replacing your fleet. That includes the maintenance that is now factored into this whole equation. That includes replacing those vehicles at a quicker pace. That is still savings on top of all of that.
This savings is over how many years?
10 years.
10 years.
But then an average savings is about $47,000. Once the fleet's completely implemented, year over year, it's a $47,000 savings from what you're doing today. Yes, sir.
How is it comparable our needs in this scenario to Hamilton County?
Pretty similar. Pretty similar. Hamilton County's been a customer of ours for right at a year. We are working on their second round. Like you mentioned, it's a phase-in process sometimes, so we're working on their second round of vehicles right now. And it was kind of like Steve sent over, more of a generic, I keep saying generic, the general fund list. And so we've got vehicles in multiple departments of theirs right now. And we did this same type of analysis for them as well. When we did this analysis for them, we had access to a little bit of a larger portion of their fleet, so the numbers were quite a bit different from a savings standpoint, but the concept was very much the same, and they are, as far as we can tell, really enjoying the program. It's allowing them to replace some of those very old vehicles, start getting into safer vehicles, and it's not costing them any extra money. So.
Okay, it says up there, I saw somewhere where it says gasoline $2.45 a gallon.
Mm-hmm.
You factored all that in?
Yes, sir. That's all factored into this, because if you look at it, and again, the fuel budget right now, that fuel budget says it's $171,000, but that's based on the fleet you have today with an average fuel economy of only 10 miles per gallon when you take it as an average over that fleet. All we're assuming is that we're going to improve that fuel economy just a few miles per gallon with this new fleet. And so you can see how that fuel economy and your fuel spend starts to drop because you're now operating higher efficiency vehicles. So not only are your maintenance costs going down, your fuel costs are also going down because you're operating those higher fuel economy vehicles. So it is included in this, yes, sir.
Okay, bottom line then, I think this is an intelligent question. What would be the bottom line for the operating cost per mile for a vehicle under this scenario with the gasoline, the maintenance and all and everything, what would you be figuring per mile for 6,000 miles a year?
Steve, do you have an answer? It's an analysis we can definitely work.
I can get you that answer.
Yeah, we can absolutely.
I'd have to crunch the math, and then I'd just embarrass myself trying to do it in front of you.
And Steve brought up a good point. It is going to depend on the vehicle,
Right.
the vehicle type,
Right.
its specific mileage pattern, but we can absolutely crunch those numbers for you.
Yeah.
I would be embarrassed to try to do that for you right now.
Okay. Didn't mean to throw a boomerang.
No, that's okay.
Well, Steve, if you could get those numbers for us, and we'll get it back out to the
Yep.
members
Yeah,
of the committee.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's no problem.
But Members, this was just an opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to make a presentation. Another opportunity, if you all think that we can save money and get our employees driving newer, safer cars and saving us money, that's what we have to look at. So it's up to this committee if they want to move forward or enter into that agreement.
Seems like it'd be quite a bit of saving on depreciation of the vehicles.
Absolutely.
You know, the turnover and the safety factor of the vehicles. You know.
Yes, sir.
And again, it is, to reiterate what I said at the very beginning, it is one of the fastest growing segments of enterprise fleet in our business across the country. It is something that's truly catching on just because it is doing what's best for the taxpayer dollar, and it's making sure those funds are going to the right spot and helping you, again, be in those safer vehicles. We look forward to the opportunity to just continue the conversation. I don't really think there's a resolution I'm asking to be passed at this point. But it's just an opportunity for us to determine the next committee meeting that we need to attend, understand the timing of your budget. I know the mayor's trying to kind of jumpstart that to just be ahead of the game. So understand the timing of your budget. If our contracts need to go to legal for review, just some of those things that we can do on the front end. That's what we're trying to do, and just wanted to get your thoughts on this, and if there were any red flags, try to be able to address those from tonight before we continue to move forward. That's what we were looking for.
One thing I'd like to see us do, maybe if we could, somebody check with the other entities in East Tennessee,
Hamilton County.
ask them the pros and cons that they have.
Sure.
And you just went into Sullivan County also, right?
We did.
Or Sullivan
Yeah,
County.
Sullivan County was truly like last week, so a matter of using them as a reference. They're not gonna have much to tell you. The one that would probably be the best reference right now is gonna be Hamilton because of size, and also, I was about to say, because of size, and also just because of the number of vehicles they've started doing, and I'm happy to pass that along.
Did you get us a copy, printed copy of the PowerPoint?
Mhm.
And maybe just a...
I have one. Would you like it? Today?
Well, I mean...
I've got it,
I'd like
yeah.
the whole committee to have one.
Yeah, I've got it. I brought
Y'all
12.
all want one, so, okay, yeah.
I brought 12,
And maybe a
in
list
case
of...
this didn't work.
Sure, a complete list of everyone in Tennessee.
Right now in
Okay.
Tennessee, it is
It's
those
just Hamilton.
four.
Okay,
It
cool.
is
That's
Hamilton,
fine.
Sullivan, Blunt, and the Memphis Housing Authority.
Okay.
We've got multiple things in the works across the state right now, but until they've actually come to fruition, I don't want to say that they've even partnered with us yet. So,
Mr. Trudy,
Well,
do we want to bring this back next month and give us time to look at those references and study the PowerPoint?
I think it'd be up to the committee if we want to bring it back next month. And just one thing I want to point out is that maybe we can include the fee officers in this also, in this discussion of this fleet order. Our fee officers really need to be included with this.
Well, that'll give them time to look at it too.
Yeah, I'd like to include the fee officers also.
Fine. And you can do it now, or you can wait and do it later, Mr. Chairman. You can reach out to the school board and the sheriff's office
Yeah.
to see if there's an interest
Yeah.
there for those two entities also.
So reach out to them later, but right now, I think we really need to get the fee officers involved, and I'd like to see it brought back next month. I like to see the budget information done and brought to us before we get into our budgetary process for the next fiscal year.
Promoted to truck too, Rick, these officers.
Do the department heads,
we don't.
department heads need to, you said the fee officers,
Yeah,
department heads all have fleets. Never mind, I don't want to get too.
Department heads, I wouldn't be too much worried about because it's looking at our general fund.
Oh, gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
But
Understood.
what I'm looking at is, you see,
Yeah, good point.
And again, we're at a good spot right now, especially as you start to enter into your budget year. Because if they have questions on what vehicles they can do or what types of budgets they're working with, we can work with them and say, hey, this is what you can do for what you have allotted in your budget, or do you need to allot a certain amount in your budget to get the vehicles you actually need? So we're happy to provide that assistance and analysis
Lisa,
pretty much
you have
whenever.
cars?
I do, I have two.
You have two? Okay.
What's the fewest
Are they
vehicles you
pool,
can
or
manage?
you just have them assigned?
You could start with 5 if
Are
you
they in
need
a
to. You
pool,
could start
or
with
you
1.
just have-
The biggest thing is we look for you to have the potential of 20. The county obviously has that potential.
But
Go back
20's
and
where
forth.
your pro forma
Yeah.
works, you can put
And
20.
Eagle and,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, right, but you could start, you could,
Ramped up to 20 though, we could stop at 20. I'm just
Yeah,
theorizing.
absolutely. What Mary Elizabeth was saying is that you have to have at least 20 vehicles in your fleet in order
to be
for us
considered a possible customer.
Yeah, correct.
That's what I'm saying, that's what I'm getting at. with-
Yeah, 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 there's never gonna be a point in time where you have to do everything. That's our goal. Obviously, that's our goal, is to be your fleet partner and to have your entire fleet, but again, we understand that it's a true phase-in process, and I would recommend that if you were to start with Enterprise, in order to see any type of results, you'd want to probably do a decent-sized pilot program. I'm not saying 200, but I'm saying you at least want to do a decent-sized pilot program to see the results of that and to see the effects of it.
And based on our analysis that Mary Elizabeth had showed, you know, that's 113 vehicles at an average age of, you know, 15 plus. When we start taking a look at the rest of the vehicles, I imagine we're probably going to see the same thing. So to do a handful of vehicles isn't going to get you anywhere near where you need to be to start correcting your age and your maintenance problem. And,
I think
and fuel
in
economy
year
problem.
one, we didn't go into this piece, but in year one, we recommended that you replace 67 of that 113 because they were either 15 years old or they had 150,000 miles on them. So that was the initial replacement, if you think of it that way. And then after that, it dropped to like 23 the next year, and then 12, 6, and 6, whatever that number was. But the bigger hit was that first year because there are a lot of vehicles that have a very high mileage pattern and are very old.
And we've been conservative. We haven't bought any new cars.
Correct, in the last 3 years at least.
Yeah.
At least in this fund.
A recession is hurt. It's painful.
Okay.
I'm gonna take 5.
Okay,
Or 1.
1 minute.
And counting.
Anybody on the committee would like
If
to
they
take
have
a
their
break?
separate, if they have a separate governing body, so probably the school board, and if their financials are separate, their budget's probably allotted from the county, but they still make decisions, what they do with it, we would just do a separate agreement. Yeah.
I think if you come back next month and make sure each member get the information that Trey brought out, maybe we can get into more detailed discussion. You know, let this be like an introductory to the program, pass out that information, and next month we get into it more details.
Mr. Chairman, if they coming back next month, and y'all, it sounds like you do want them to come back next month, what if they had like 20 of the top that needs to be replaced, and just to
Prioritize
have
it.
hard numbers of what that actually looked like, just for you to look at?
That sounds good.
Yeah, just prioritize.
And that would let the fee offices also look
Right.
at what we're doing right there, or what they're doing to show
I think I
that.
passed enough
And that might be beneficial to you to any other portion of this that you might want to do or not do.
Yeah, sounds good.
And it will have some numbers also on that insurance question that, you know, what does that involve, as, you know, as well as fuel also.
Okay, that sounds good. We don't need a motion to that effect, I don't think.
But we're still getting word back from the other county.
Yeah.
Right, and
Yeah, well,
I can pass along that information to
Just give
Steve.
us Steve Ryan.
Yeah,
We'll-
I can do
we'll
that
reach
for
out to
sure.
him.
We trying to have.
Yeah, he said he was gonna do
I was a Hamilton.
Yeah, I can do that for sure.
Compare with.
Well, we appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank
for the
you.
opportunity, so.
Mary Elizabeth.
We look
Yeah,
forward
well,
to seeing you
contact.
next month.
Absolutely.
My mom's
Same here.
married
Thank
to
you.
you. So the Elizabeth comes from Franklin.
I like the idea on the safety. Okay. Thank you for that presentation. Item 4, use of courthouse plus ground, $1 million liability requirement.
Mr. Chairman, can we bump that down past number 5, and let's go ahead and talk about the new parking facility?
Okay.
So he can go
Okay.
home. Okay. I'll take care with you.
New parking facility update.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Got a little summary of our analysis.
You already did a cut out, Jeremy. So, Mr. Chairman, we were going to talk about new parking facilities, and also we were supposed to get some numbers back, I believe, to this committee on repurposing of the old judicial building. We're going to beg off and ask if we could bring the discussion about the old judicial building back next month. Mr. Parker, Mr. Jerry Preston he was planning on taking a trip to Greece, and he got feeling bad and then had an emergency appendectomy. So he's not here as our representative he was our representative or our eyes on that project. So with the architects and engineers here, we're just going to pass on that, Mr. Chairman, and we'll come back next month. But they are here to talk about the new parking facility. We had asked, what are we going to do about that, because Mercersburg Electric is parking in it, Pinnacle Bank is parking in it, and we don't have enough room. Of what it was designed to do is for our people to go to court and park in it. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right, thank you.
Steve.
Again, my name is Steve Johnson. I'm with Gresham Smith. At the last meeting where this topic was brought up for the committee to discuss, we were charged with doing some analysis about what are the options for the county to operate the garage with controlling who parks in it, and I would say controlling the capacity of the garage. What are the couple devices or a couple strategies the county could use to control it better? So what you have is a one-page summary and a description of 3 ideas about how to do that, and some discussion about some additional signage. And then following that, for each of the 3 ideas, there's a little bit of a diagram on the Maple Street side where the primary entrance is, of what some of these changes might mean to the garage. So that's what you have in front of you. And I will go through it and then give you an overview of what these are, and then we can go into it in whatever detail or whatever questions you have about it. So, scheme 1 is what we've called control access, and that is there's full gates, entry and exit gates at both Walnut and Maple, so that you can only get into the garage by coming to a gate and pulling a ticket, parking anywhere you want. And then if you have business in the courthouse, you can take your ticket to the courthouse and get a sticker on it that validated it. And then when you left the garage and you go to the courthouse, you come to the gate, put your ticket in, and you'd exit. If you were in the garage and not having business at the courthouse, then you would pay for however long you parked in the garage. Kind of traditional gated parking garages everybody has seen. And then there could be a period of time that was 2 hours, 1 hour, whatever. There's some management operational parameters that you can have some free parking, or it was all charged. So that's the first idea, and we're calling it controlled access. It would be the most expensive idea. And let me add this disclaimer or this comment. Whenever you put the control arms on a garage, you slow down the flow in and out of a garage, and you potentially create some congestion at peak moments in terms of queuing and people turning in the garage and exiting the garage. So that comes with completely controlled access, and I know you've all experienced it in garages. So
controlled access could be designed too that, say, like after a certain hour, that the arm just comes out.
that is
free.
correct.
Okay.
It could be free flowing and the arms come up at a certain time, and it's not a charge garage. Yes. Okay. Let me go through the different ideas, and then we can come back and I can try to answer your questions. The second idea, scheme 2, we called it ticketed parking, and that's where there are no gates, but the spaces are numbered, and you come in and you park, and you go to an electronic kiosk on each floor by the elevators and the stairs, and then you pay and pull a ticket for your spot. And you've seen these parking lots all over in garages. They're more self-service and they're less a cost of equipment. So it's a ticketed garage, and you could then also set how many hours you wanted free, and if you extended beyond that, then you would pay in usually 1 or 2 hour increments. And you've seen those garages too. Then you would have somebody come around, you'd have to monitor it. You have to have somebody come and monitor the garage and then essentially send a ticket if somebody didn't pay. So it's not self-service or it does require a monitor, an attendant to visit the site every so often.
So Steve, you'd have two options there. You would have either we'd have to find a company, a third party, to come and monitor those
Right.
every 2 hours.
companies
or
do this.
we would have to hire an employee and pay them maybe part-time or pay benefits if they were full-time.
Or
So that's an
Or add
additional
it to
cost.
some county employees a job description to monitor this. All right, so that's a next tier down of controlling access to a garage. Then the third scheme is what we call monitored parking, and think about this one as if it's kind of exactly the way it is now around the courthouse square. You go into the garage, it has a sign that says 2 hour parking, and then there is a monitor that goes and will give you a ticket, like it's currently like the courthouse is working. And I believe the city does that now, but you could treat the garage that similar way, where nobody had to pull a ticket or do anything. You would just get a ticket if you exceeded the time limit, and the time limit obviously could vary. And in this case, there would also need to be not manned, but an attendant that visits the garage periodically to check the duration of how long the car has been in the garage.
One question I have, Mayor, I don't know if you answered or Steve, if you answered, just from a very personal perspective, I'm always concerned when handicap accessibility gets limited. Is there any way that we could just move on all of these presentations, it says removing this parking spot that's handicap accessible? There is already a limited amount of handicap accessible parking. Is there not a way for us to just bump that up and move and take away one of the traditional parking
coming down
spots?
the other side, you could
I would rather do
You
that.
could extend further
Okay.
down and relocate that space to the other end.
That's what I was
Yes,
getting at.
yes.
I don't want to eliminate handicap parking.
We actually have
Tough enough as
one
it
more
is.
than code requires, but
Okay.
you certainly could
Yeah,
add another one down the
okay.
west.
I'd feel much better about that
Yep.
than taking away handicap accessible parking spot.
So, and then, well, let's go to the second page to follow up on your question. Kind of the key elements, the things highlighted in red. What we're talking about is the first handicap space by the Maple entrance. We are suggesting, in order to make things flow as fast as possible, eliminating that first handicap space, which actually gives a little more maneuvering room for the egress and entry into the garage. And then we're also recommending outside of the building, near the sidewalk by the entrance, a sign that would clearly state, and you can see from both directions, that this is a judicial center parking garage only. So there's no doubt about the intent of the garage, make that very obvious. And then inside the building, we're proposing adding some additional stop signs and some painting, both signs and striping on the floor, which will help to some extent, as much as people read signs. I'm not sure I can control that, but it would be obvious, clear signs that you should stop, and then turning, it should facilitate allowing the turning movements to go a little better. The third page, with the ticketed, it shows up by the stair and the elevator. Everything else is pretty much the same on this plan. The only thing that's different is there's a ticketing kiosk, an electronic, looks a lot like an ATM. I know you've all seen them up between the stairs and elevators on each floor. The third idea is really the signage. The monitored one is really about the signage, repeating the signage on all the schemes. So I went through that really fast, but that we believe, and part of our methodology, we design our company has done a lot of garages, so we know a fair amount about this. But we also brought in a company called Walker Parking. They are a nationally known design and engineering company, and their only business is parking garages, both the design and the operation of garages. So we had several conversations with them, And through those, we boiled it down to these 3 tiers of ideas about how to control access into your garage. There's a couple of other ideas that are softer ideas that are not really design ideas, but there is controlling the start times of events in the new judicial center, and that gets to how the judges and clerks operate the court so that times could be staggered. That evens out the demand load on the courthouse. That doesn't really show up in our work, but that's a possibility that you could manage the flow of the demand the judicial center has on the garage. That could possibly help it. And then I don't know what conversations have actually taken place with the neighbors around the garage, and what have they been told about what's okay or not okay to use, how to use the garage. So there's a communication effort there that could take place that might help control it some. But above those sort of soft measures, obviously making people pay for parking will control the capacity of the garage. And then there's varying ways to do that, from more expensive to less expensive. So scheme 1 is the most expensive, 2 is in a middle range, and 3 is less cost.
And one kicker here on scheme 1, the bottom line says, which the city is unlikely to allow.
If there's queuing
Yeah.
over time,
Yeah.
if there's excessive queuing out in the street, that will be a source of complaints
And
by
that
the
would
citizens.
a couple of days a month, probably.
At peak moments,
Lines backing out if there's a gate.
yeah, it will happen. It happens in all gated
Sure.
garages.
But you can look for that to happen frequently.
Oh, yeah. The more prosperity comes to Murfreesboro, the more that will happen.
Your recommendation, if I may be so.
Well, to me, the ticketed, the middle one makes a lot of sense to me because of the congestion issue. Essentially, you hit on. I believe the possibility exists of solving one problem and maybe creating another one, and a ticketed solution where you are charging to park will limit the capacity and the garage will free flow, and it won't have the gates on it, and it's less operational cost, I'll say.
Would it be foolish to consider signage? I didn't know it was courthouse only, as it were. I mean, it's named the
Yeah,
judicial.
well, a low level
Signage
of,
only.
and
For
communication.
90 days, or communicate with
Communication
Pinnacle
and signage might
electric
help
help
some,
for
yes.
6 months.
Yep.
And then at 12 months, we maybe move up to ticketed or something.
Well, and if you were to think going through a sequence, you could then go to scheme 3, which is kind of what you have now. That would be the next step.
Yeah.
And how the courthouse parking is, the courthouse square parking is managed.
So on the ticket, they would go to the kiosk, get a ticket, and then go back to the car and put it on the dash.
Yes.
It's like all the lights in Nashville.
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, and there are some that are slightly more sophisticated where there's actually an app. And once you go and type, you at the parking spot, you type in where you are with your phone app and you pay right there. And then the operator has that same app and they don't even have to look at the garage. They're sensors, they know where the car is. But that's another level of sophistication, and it's really about high demand garages. And I'm not recommending that for this garage yet. But yes, you would go get a ticket and put it back on your dash. Yes.
Can you do 2 hours free with the ticketing?
Yes, you could regulate the amount of free parking. However, that could be 1, 2, 3,
How you get your
4.
ticket.
To stop the day parkers, you could do 4 hours. You could regulate how many free hours would be allowed. That's another variable about managing capacity.
So when do they pay on this ticketing?
They pay when they pull the ticket.
That's what I'm asking.
They
How can you do
estimate.
free?
Well, you saw what Nashville does, and I think the mayor did this, which I'll go park to get lunch somewhere,
Yeah.
and I'll literally walk up to a kiosk and pay, and I get my ticket out, but it'll say on there, Phil, first hour free, and so it's registered with the people that watch that lot to know that I'm parked in spot 55, and I came in at 6:55 and I'm free till 7:55. When I go over that limit is when they can go out there to look to see if I'm still parked there, or if I paid more.
Didn't hit your card?
Yeah, then it would hit my card if I've
And
already
the
said,
app
okay, I'm gonna
lets
do
you
your
do it
3.
from
And
the
the app,
phone if you're in a
that's the big
restaurant.
thing. The app lets you, if you're stuck at lunch, to say, okay, I need to put on 30 more minutes, and then they charge you. I think that's what Trey was asking. So you walk up, you just put your credit card in, it gives you a ticket, put on your dash. You go to the courthouse for 2 hours, and you let you pick. It'll say 0 to 1 hour free, 2 to 4, $8, all day, $25. But it lets you pick your hours, and then it's registered in a machine and a software that they can track it to say, okay, lot number 55 has been there 6 hours, and then it says it should have been 4. Go write the ticket, and that's how they monitor it all over Nashville.
And then monitoring makes it accountable.
Mhm.
Somebody has to monitor.
Yeah, you have to have.
Of course, we'd have to pay that.
You have
It'd be
to,
a cost for us, but
the cost is to
that's what
pay
they
to
do.
operate, and then the net proceeds come to the county. Yeah.
And they could put in like cash on the kiosk too, if they had cash.
Mhm.
Some of them,
Some
yes,
of them.
you have cash. Most that I'm aware of are credit.
Mayor,
Yeah, Steve, can we share with the members the cost of
Sure,
Scheme 1,
I
Scheme
asked
2?
Walker to give me a range of costs. I didn't kind of publish it on your paperwork, but Walker said Scheme 1, you could expect the cost to be between 150 and 200,000. And these are in design and installed and capital costs.
One-time capital.
Everything.
And it's already wired
Yeah,
for
the
that.
garage has the capacity to do all of this. There's some installation and some, modification to it, but it has the capacity for this. And Scheme 2 for ticketing is between 50 and 75,000. Those are Walker's rough estimates. And then the
Keep-
monitored parking.
Before you go there,
Yeah.
keep in mind with your cost, add this, you gotta have somebody to monitor. So
Right,
you
that's
gotta
what I
add
was
in
just
those
going to
costs.
add.
Both have
There's,
some, even the ticketing, the
the mo-
control has some monitoring.
yeah, and all of them have some operating costs, payroll. and
On
for
control,
personnel.
the only thing that you would have controlled would be when the person takes the ticket and they go over to the judicial building and they get it stamped or validated at the judicial building that they're there for court for that purpose. We get a deputy to validate it, and they come back, they stick it in, arm raises up, and they go on their way.
Steve suggests, though, there will be some limited monitoring for
Well,
like troubleshooting.
And troubleshooting, somebody hits that
Yeah,
button.
there'll be a
says-
microphone on the arm.
Yeah.
And you have to, someone has to answer the call
Yeah.
when it's operating, so.
I can't get out.
So,
know,
there's
and
a
I get out.
problem or something.
I've done that many times.
It has to be somebody nearby to deal with it. But it's very rare now to have a person at the garage, unless it's an extremely high volume garage, like at the airport.
So I don't think Scheme 1 has a person except in the judicial building. Scheme 2 and Scheme 3 would have human elements of,
Someone physically coming to the garage on a regular basis to check.
and there's no cost on that because that's basically what we're doing now. However, I don't think that we could convince the city to come and check our county garage to see how long they've been sitting there. So we'd have to hire somebody. There's no cost for equipment, but we would have to hire somebody to come by and check, throughout the day. If they've been there 2 hours, you have to mark the tire, kind of like what they do here.
Or they're taking a picture now of the tags, I believe. They used to mark the tires.
Well, one of our main conversation pieces too was congestion. That would only increase. Not only is it triple the cost, it also would not eliminate congestion and potential parking issues. that
At
people
peak
just-
moments, it does not eliminate congestion, but it strictly controls capacity.
And then you get down to signage, and basically trying to get people to understand signage, we're no better off than what we currently are. We have a dilemma, and that's what this committee is tasked to do, is try to figure out the problem, because Lisa, everybody you're seeing nobody has room to park to go to the judicial building, because it's full from the other entities.
Well, I would, as we process this, I could envision a scenario where we approve immediate signage, get it up, even if we take another month to about, we can start the signage, the limited signage, and of course would avoid the ticketing commentary, but get signage up. Prohibition of these businesses or this use, could perhaps give some immediate relief.
And you could instruct me to send a letter to both those entities and tell them that
There's
their
only
employees.
2 entities, isn't it, that basically park in there? Is that all?
Yes. That's what I'm hearing from the fee officers.
The Mayor and I had talked too that almost simultaneously, we're gonna have to work on her issue, or not just her issue, but that whole office over there. You got the property assessor upstairs, you've got where you get your tags and license and stuff in her office, and you got the Register of Deeds office. And so if you don't do something there, and you do this, that's gonna push those people out. I'm not paying, I'm gonna go over and park over there.
Yeah.
And so
It's,
her, you know, parking area is the one not paying. So, you know, we've talked about a couple ideas here just while we're.
And certainly, if you make the garage a pay facility, it'll push that capacity somewhere else. So there's no doubt about, that's a byproduct of this also. yes.
these are all struggles that we're having. Steve shared with us earlier today. Rutherford County is so close to Nashville. We're on the cusp of
This comes
paying
with growth.
for parking.
You
You know,
Parking
it's
stops
big
being
business
free
in-
everywhere.
in the
you
big
start
cities.
paying.
I mean, it's a lot of
Paying
revenue.
for convenience is what starts to happen.
On scheme 3, so that's, really we'd have to do nothing at the time and hire a,
Person.
like a meter.
Yeah,
person.
meter.
That's exactly right.
And so how would, so we're saying an hour free parking and someone goes to court and it's 2 hours, and then they get a ticket, how would we just?
Well, it would operate the way the courthouse did operate. You got a ticket. Then you
Okay.
Have to go pay it, or you
Go
have,
pay it.
you have
Well, some down to Lisa.
a warrant, or you have,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you don't pay, do you have a,
I mean, it's a parking ticket. I mean, when you, on the courthouse square, what happens now when you get it? When you get a ticket after the 2 hours, yeah. It's how the courthouse was working
Well,
prior to the moving.
but we go to City Hall.
We go to
and pay
City
that.
Hall,
We go to
that's all
City
set.
Hall, they have a kiosk.
Yeah,
Do
and
we have the person that
I don't know if
can
there
take
can
cash?
be cooperation, or that gets worked out, or it has to be 2 separate systems. Yeah, I don't know.
Collaboration would be nice.
It could be the same system theoretically.
What's the cost on scheme 3?
It doesn't have a capital cost. It has an operational cost.
Okay,
It
operational
has
cost.
a tiny, I'll say it has a small one, because there's some signage that would have to be installed, but very minimal cost.
But it would require an attendant.
It would require an attendant and then a paying system, after the ticket was mailed out.
Do you have an estimate on signage? I know the signage would change slightly.
I do not, but it's probably, $5,000, somewhere in that range.
I can come pay at your office, couldn't I? As long as you got $1 over every
Would they
transaction.
monitor your parking?
She started frowning until I said that dollar. She goes, oh, yeah.
Which we budgeted an attendant? pay?
I'll get out in front of myself about knowing the operational side of this. I don't know where the break point is where a garage pays for itself. I don't know, but we could, the way to get an answer is to bring a vendor in, somebody, Premier Parking or one of the shops that runs, and they can tell you where the break points are about when it pays for itself, or when it's neutral. I don't have the
Like
answer.
at least break even.
Yeah, so it's not a drag, it's a neutral cost.
And I think there's another parking facility, it was in Sunday's paper over here, at First Methodist Church with the new development, another 150 car garage with the boutique hotel and Starbucks going into the old Methodist Church. But that's going to be probably paid because they have to try to make money.
Yeah, the revenue streams.
Well, I used to work downtown, and I had a parking ticket that I paid for monthly.
That's what I have.
And I had a parking place 24 hours a day,
Yeah.
7 days a week.
Correct.
And which was nice when they had all these events down there. But I
Well, that's employees, and here again, we got people going to court. A lot of them don't even have money, let alone
That's
credit
amazing,
cards.
yeah.
Right.
They want to go see their family, get sent to jail or whatever. And this is our dilemma that we've got to try to figure
Can't
this out.
forget, we built that garage for the judicial building. That should be first priority. Just finding a parking space for them to just go into that judicial building.
It's just a matter of time. So 2 or more levels will have to be added in that garage.
Probably, yes.
Could be anything.
Could handle that?
It's designed, yes, for 2 more floors.
Yeah.
Which we tried to get the
We
city.
tried repeatedly.
And
We tried to get the city to take it, they wouldn't do it.
Just to speak to that on behalf of the public, my investigation of that suggested that the price we offered to other entities was pretty high for per parking space. Do you have any
Well,
awareness of that?
It was the cost of building the garage.
So it was a direct cost.
Oh, I was involved in that. So
Okay,
I
gotcha,
have some
okay.
direct knowledge about that. We asked
With the,
2 or 3 times
Right.
during the course of the design, from the very beginning where there was like no change in the flow of work to make that garage bigger. And then we're almost through with the documents. It's kind of last call. And then there was a last call as they were building
Right.
the garage.
Okay.
You know,
And the
it was-
offer was cost.
And the cost per space went up at each time because it was requiring rework
Okay.
to do it, because it wasn't caught in a normal flow of work. But I remember there were three times the question went out.
Well, we reached out
Are you interested in
Yeah,
2
and
floors?
that was confirmed, but the price, I have had it suggested to me that the price
Well, probably-
offered was higher than the cost of general parking lot construction, and
The last one probably was.
understandably. at
Because
that
it was in
juncture.
the sequence. I know the first one was the actual cost of what the space, what the per space cost. It actually went down a little bit because the economy of scale as the garage was a little bit
And I know
bigger.
now it's way up, starting after all the sequences are.
Yeah, it's very expensive. It's much more expensive now because there's a disruption factor, and it's a little more difficult to build, on top of it now.
Well, Steve brought up the fact that whatever we do here, we have a simultaneous conversation about
It's
signage
the surface parking lot across the street.
arms or control
Yes.
over here.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would submit that we take a month to look at this and bring it back at next month's meeting to
well,
make a final decision if we want to do anything.
yeah, I like that, take a month, maybe look at scheme 1, 2, and 3, but if per se a signage, we can go ahead and get started on it now.
Well, I think that's what you brought up.
I would
Yeah.
like to discuss could we achieve the minimal signage that would be conducive to all 3
Yeah,
scenarios.
that could be implemented pretty quickly. A couple of these signs that helps the flow, and the exterior sign that says judicial parking only.
Well, on the judicial parking only, like on weekends, I mean,
Well, you could have hours,
Yeah.
8 to 5.
okay.
I like that. You did the actual text on the sign.
Okay.
Yeah, the actual text.
Oh, yeah, on weekends.
Yeah. I think we should proceed on with that right now.
Yeah.
Well, I move that we proceed on with the signage.
Okay, I can buy that.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the signage.
Everybody second.
Can we,
Commissioner Dodd, he seconded.
could we add the mayor sending a letter to the 2 entities? Add to that since at this point?
Would you amend your motion to add, communicate to the nearby businesses that it's judicial only?
I can do that.
You get that?
That's a good point.
Where did all these people park before we built this building?
In their parking places,
In where?
in their parking places,
On the streets.
on
in
the
various-
streets. And they have their own parking spaces, but from what I've heard, they've been told to go park there. So
Because it's
it frees up
They free up their parking
customer
spaces.
spaces. Before, everybody just kept driving around,
Till they found the space.
I know that the way it was when I was on purchasing at 9 o'clock in the morning. So, but there, I was just wondering, where did they park? Because it's 2 hours or an hour or something like that in a lot of those places, and they would go out and move their cars.
Yeah, well, it was
Now-
an hour. Now the city just last month decided to go 2 hours.
Okay.
So now they're allowing everybody 2 hours, but you can drive around the square now, and there's a lot of extra
Yeah.
space since everyth's gone down that
Yeah,
direction.
but in the past, they also utilized the parking garage that we got down here with the city.
Right.
And, you know, they used it.
They don't wanna
But
walk
now, it's more convenient
Yeah, they don't
for
want
them.
Park over here.
Right.
Well,
And understandably so, it is more
our
convenient.
employees, can they get a ticket or something that they can park free?
They can't park there
Well,
unless they're judicial employees.
They would have to be registered with the office somehow or
well,
other,
if you
or
want.
get a decal put on.
Well, if you went to Scheme 1 or Scheme 2, Steve, couldn't they?
You could,
If the
under
county
the
could.
controls, you could have a card
They'd have a
that gave you
card,
access to the garage. You could also have stickers.
I don't like stickers because they trade cars too many
Yeah,
times.
so, I mean,
Maybe
a
expiration date.
permitting and stickers, you know, is another way to designate someone should be parking here. Do it to an attendant looking at it. That would be another way to allow that to happen.
Boys here in the courthouse still go out every 2 hours
To
and move their
move
car.
their vehicles. They've been doing it for years.
I know they've been doing it for years, but they wouldn't work for me and do that because I want to pay them for a day's work, not a part day's work.
Do you know how many parking spaces our fee officers, employees have
I'm sorry.
per person?
How many parking spaces would,
We did this math, and I believe it was, if we have a full staff building, which is highly unusual, I believe there's like 34 or 38 extra spaces, and that's all that's in our parking lot if we were to have fully
Everybody.
staffed.
Do y'all have space in the new parking garage? How many slots were you allotted?
We weren't.
You don't get any. You're not, it's not parking for your employees.
No.
But
Right,
right.
But I
sometimes
do have employees that are parking.
They're
I've
parking
had to
there
park
now,
there.
because it's
there's no
full
parking
from the
in my-
judicial.
Okay,
Right.
but some of the uses, the county employees are parking there.
Mhm.
Because they can't park where they're supposed to.
But otherwise, your folks know it's not for the employees of your building.
Exclusive
I
use.
haven't
Correct.
discussed that with them. I haven't.
I would, as in addition to letters to businesses, it needs to be letters to our employees as well. If
Well,
it's
I don't think
judicial
that-
But
parking,
I
lot,
don't know where else they.
I would hate to send out.
as we program into this, the parking is for judicial business only.
Well, I would hate to see them get a letter because she brought up a point is that our employees cannot park
In their own lot.
in their own lot.
Understood.
And when they can't park in their own lot, the only choice is to use our judicial building lot.
I'm certainly not opposed to that.
And let me add on to that, at the end of the month, when the county clerk's businesses out to the street, if I have an employee leave to go for lunch and they come back, they're not gonna have a parking place, so then they have to search, and
Yeah, until
we've all ended up in the judicial.
until we can relieve her pressure at the end of the month when everybody's getting new tags, until we can build her another second location to relieve some of that, is the other dilemma. Maybe,
And that was a part of the office study, was that satellite location, to take some of the pressure off of that.
or you add additional signage in her parking lot that says not judicial building,
Right.
fee officers only.
And that's what I was
That's what
coming
you
back
were getting
around
at,
to.
yeah.
Do we have
To get them back where they needed to be.
do we simultaneously have
Yeah.
to do some
And
signage?
I believe we do have to have some control measure on her parking
side,
lot.
yeah.
It comes with this solution.
Okay.
so while we're discussing that, Mr. Chairman, I know it's another item, but I'd like for this committee to take up next month, looking for Lisa's second location as we start budgeting for this next year. Let's get serious about that. We've been talking about it for a long time.
Got a motion on the floor first.
Yeah, let's take care of the motion, but get more discussion on the signage.
And the county mayor to send a letter to MED and Pinnacle regarding usage of the judicial parking garage.
Everybody understand that motion? If so, all those in favor, there's money involved, call the roll.
Commissioner Cook?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes.
Chairman, may I stay on this topic? Do we need to have a motion to do signage in the county building simultaneously, a separate motion, and have the minimal amount of signage as our consultant might suggest to get Lisa some relief right away?
Okay, you want to let him work on that with Lisa?
So just wait on that if we, well, I'm fine waiting, but
Yeah, no, I would push it with that motion. I think that's what Commissioner Dodd's getting at, is add signage to Ms. Crowell's parking lot that says this is for employees only, or however the mayor and Lisa worked it, or Steve, whatever.
I think we mentioned it last month, Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, that one way in coming off of Walnut,
Yeah.
one way out on the Maple.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll change the
Yeah.
flow.
Yeah.
Include the signage in that.
Yeah, it just to get her some relief, and I think that's what Commissioner Dodd was trying to
and
get.
not signage to change traffic flow. We don't have the engineering suggested to make a decision on traffic flow, but could we do the minimum signs that say this is for your customers only, whatever that minimum sign is, in this purchase or in this acquisition? I don't know that we need to go so far as to decide tonight we're going to change traffic flows
No.
without a presentation.
You could ask him to come back and do that next month.
Yeah.
But I think
But the signage could be covered.
while we're at it,
Well, we can ask him to do it next month. The reason I say that, if you go to her parking lot and then start putting up signage, and then we decide to change the flow of the traffic, these signage may have to be changed based on the flow of the traffic.
I was trying to get up.
That's a good point, Mr. Chairman.
That's what I'm looking at. Okay?
And I think we need to come back with
Yeah,
a
yeah.
more,
Oh, yeah.
less emulsive
Definitely.
idea for
Let's look at
the
it
county
next month.
building. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving right along.
Thanks for moving us along.
Okay.
Gotta wait another month.
That's a good
We're not gonna do
report.
anything for
Good
it.
report. Good report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your precision with that.
We're getting ready to roll now.
We ready to vote?
Oh, we voted on the, we already voted on the signage. We were discussing, okay, let's look at use of courthouse plus ground, $1 million liability
Yeah.
requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when I took this job, I was told that I was responsible for authorizing whoever wants to use our inner circle in the courthouse grounds, you know, from the farmer's market to whatever needs to do that. So I have to sign off on that. And it was brought to my attention that this committee may want to look at requiring either to be added as additional named insured, the county, if they're going to use our premises from a bodily injury standpoint, to be named onto their policy, or either get them to take out a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day special event policy for $1 million worth of liability. If somebody, I know this weekend, they're having Love, what's the group that signs up? There's a group this weekend that's utilizing this, that they actually booked it through the mayor's office last February. And they're having bouncy moonwalk type things for kids and et cetera. So there's a lot of activities that could put the county into, you know, whether we're liable or not, we're still going to be sued, you know, but if we just at least have something on record in the mayor's office, that we've got the front line of protection from that group. And it might even possibly control the type of groups that want to use the inside loop. I know Mayor Burgess cut out having weddings inside the courthouse because they were getting out of control and trashing the restrooms, and we were having to pay extra maintenance fees and et cetera for the custodians, and they have to be here, and they'd get to drinking in the bathrooms and et cetera. So we cut off, I believe that was cut out during this term.
Do you have an immediate best advice Like, is adding additionally insured, if a party's using this inner circle, does anybody currently have to have a policy where we can simply be additionally insured? It would be the simplest.
I don't think there's a requirement right now. Nobody's ever put that into effect.
Nobody's ever had insurance.
No, we've never requested that on the form that they fill out.
Have we looked at we're
self-insured.
So a rider of some sort, is there a rider that we could add to? Being self-insured, I don't know if you have riders. But
We'd have to check with Melissa to see if the current carrier would be willing to add additional people on. It's much easier and cleaner to let them provide their own coverage. So if they're a 501c3, a legitimate 501c3, not-for-profit organization, then they can usually get a certificate from their carrier and provide that, to that when they fill that out.
So that would legitimize those who wish to use it.
That's correct. Or if you have a one-day event, I know I wrote, Jim Tracy called me last week. There's a buddy of his down in Flat Creek in Bedford County that does a sorghum squeeze. And for that one-day event, based on the number of people you estimate is going to come, they charge you $275 for that special event for $1 million worth of coverage. For that event from a bodily injury standpoint, that we wanted to make sure if anybody fell, got hurt, stepped in a hole, the mule ran over them as they were squeezing the sorghum, whatever. It's just it's a protection of the county by having another layer in front of ours.
I hate to squelch the use.
Well, I think what Mayor Ketchner's referencing is similar to what they do with hole-in-ones at golf tournaments. You
Golf
pay
tournaments.
for the insurance part of it, but your car, you get the $1 million if you make the hole-in-one.
The schools do that now.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
The schools do that now.
I think the
for
schools
churches.
require $2 million, like the churches would use cafeterias to have upstart churches. They require a certificate for $2 million to use it on Sundays. Used to be $1 million, but they bumped it to $2 million.
Is there anything in the form that they fill out that it's called a hold harmless agreement, that clause that, that they hold you harmless if anything happens? Is there a clause
There's
in
not in that, but I did, in talking to Melissa, she said that 8 or 9 years ago, we used to get them to sign a hold harmless agreement, but I don't think anybody used it. However, if they don't have insurance and they can just sign a hold harmless, it's going to come straight to us. The purpose is to try to create $1 million, because we're going to have to hire an attorney or use our own attorney, whatever direction we go on that. So this is just an idea. So just want to make sure that we protect the county as much as possible.
No requested action then on that? Just take under advisement till the future?
Well, I would not,
We need
I'd
to
like
do
to have some
something.
decision going forward,
I
not
thought Mr.
sometime in
Jones,
the
you were
future.
just throwing it out there.
Well, it
We
is
need to do something with it, it's
Yeah.
a good point
You're saying,
brought
don't
up.
let everybody come up here and do whatever they want to.
I make a request that we have them to furnish $1 million, show us that they have $1 million policy and register it with their mayor's office, if using the grounds, around the courthouse,
Well,
or any of the county grounds.
well, if you remember the protesters that we had, that would have probably eliminated those folks from coming up, because they, came in, filled out the application that they wanted it, but they're not really organized. And they didn't pay dues to that rally. That probably would have eliminated them being able to use it. And then that way we have something that we can call the sheriff's department and say, listen, if they don't have it, they're using it, they need to be removed. It's just protection of our courthouse.
Do you want this on any county grounds or just
What about any
courthouse?
county grounds?
I would just say go with our grounds for now, courthouse grounds.
Courthouse.
Because, other things may be in the play for our other properties. We'd have to check on that.
Well, I think all the schools are required on
Right.
any function.
Lane and all those, they probably got something in place.
But that's limited, Mayor, very specific to certain events, because I don't want
I don't want
to
it
harm First Amendment rights or anything about
Yes, sir.
gathering for protests or something
Sure.
like that. This is very targeted.
Yeah, most everything, it used to be, it was here and then it moved down to the Civic
Yeah.
Plaza. Now it's
Yeah.
all beginning to move back here.
So if somebody wants to have an official event here, there's a process to come to your office and apply.
Yeah, there's an
Now we're going to
application
have
that Vicki has.
apply and
Furnish.
supply
Mhm.
us a certificate of insurance.
Like Lane Niagara and them, they already have.
Yeah, they got it in place.
It's already been done there, so all the events. they
So
do.
Blackman Community, when they have the barbecue, they have to supply a certificate to the county out there to use that facility.
What about Lang Ag? What do they do?
They got it, they got it, that's what it's
They have to
like.
require that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Anybody want to hear the motion again? Wake up, Trent. If not, call the roll over.
It's just,
Okay.
we don't have to, but I will.
All in favor of this said motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passed. Send that to the mayor. Next thing on the agenda, just a reminder, next meeting is Thursday, November the 29th at 5:30.
Last thing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And I talked about it just a moment ago, but if you want to create a subcommittee from this committee to start looking, or I can start it, but looking for an alternative location.
I was gonna bring that up. We discussed that. I remember specifically discussing that we were going out and looking for another place, and I think she was going to do it.
Whatever
And
happened.
bring back the
Yeah.
information to us.
Well, the previous mayor, I took it, some properties to him, and, looking at it, discussing it, and going out there and talking about it. You were involved in some of this. Well, the previous mayor decided that it was so close to the end of his term that we would just bring it up at this time.
Okay.
Well, here we are.
So here I am.
Yeah.
So I still have those properties. Now, I'm not sure if they're still available.
Right.
Other properties have been brought up to me. A couple other ones, and, you know, they're all in the area
Right.
where I feel like we need that facility. I just think it's just time to bring it to a discussion.
Some break.
Okay.
Yeah,
satellite?
bring it
Well,
to a direction.
You would stay here, but have a satellite, like, you
Yes.
still have one in Smyrna?
I do.
Eagleville.
So it'll be a third one there?
And Eagleville.
Okay, it'll be a third one.
I have, the Eagleville office is open one day a week, and that is the need that they have there right now.
That's why she needs a car.
Where's this one, Lisa? You mentioned it's on the same area. I'm not familiar where
I would
specifically.
like it in the Blackman area
Blackman
somewhere
area,
in that
Texas area.
vicinity.
Got it.
Yes, Blackman.
And on the other side of I-24.
Right.
Got it. Yeah.
Yes, that's,
I don't think we need a subcommittee for this. I think maybe you could work through the mayor office and bring it back to us.
Okay.
Wouldn't you say that committee?
would, and have the PBA maybe take,
Yeah. Let's gather all the information, just bring it directly back to
We
us,
can
do
do
you
that.
right?
We'll do that, Mr. Chairman.
I think that would be a lot
What's your
better.
address? It's his own commercial. It will be.
now.
But I think that would be cleaner and quicker.
Sure, okay. We can do that, Mr. Chairman.
And give us a report next month.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
I have a question. I've had a lot of complaints about the Lane Agri Park. About 15 speed bumps been put in out there. And who's responsible for that? And did anybody request any permission to do it, or who's in charge of that? I thought it
Property
was,
Management Committee, that's all.
I thought it was supposed to come under property
Yeah,
management.
but Lane Agriculture, they got a committee that
Do they?
the ag committee, we just You just put two commissioners on that
Okay,
committee.
well, I guess we need to let them know.
We'll let them
They're
know.
not speed bumps where it's boom, boom. It's
Yeah.
like,
I can check on it, but I heard that they had a tremendous amount of racing around the building kind of deal.
That's what these
Come
kids
in
are
the
doing
front,
now, it's
come around the
burnouts,
side,
or what do
time
they call it?
themselves.
I don't,
They're like doing it on top of our new garage, so they're doing the
I did
burnout.
notice the last time we was out there that they had speed bumps, so they had a lot of them.
there's quite a few of them.
Yes.
but I don't think it's like boom, boom type speed bump.
But I think they came in under that committee, right?
I think so, but I'll call and check for you.
Okay.
I get your call.
It's according to how fast you're going, whether it's boom, boom, or.
If you're going fast, it's too fast.
How low your car is.
Well, you bring that information back to us next month.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Hey, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else to come before the committee?
Motion to adjourn?
So be it.